Hey, I'm Mitchell and I'm a travel documentary photographer. I truly believe that I became a photographer in India. That incredible country pushed me beyond my limits. It took me right out of my comfort zone and taught me just so many valuable lessons. In this video, I'm going to share the 5 most important lessons that India taught me. They're very practical, but much more importantly, they're actually applicable to wherever you are in the world. The lessons that I learned in India influenced every one of my travels since. In fact, they still shape the way that I approach photography and even the way that I navigate the world. By the way, this video is part of a series of videos that I'm sharing during the launch of my latest educational photographic resource, The Photographer's Mindset India. You might want to check it out. The link to all of the info is in the description below. So let's dive right in. As a photographer, one of the first things that strikes you about India is how open and welcoming the people are to being photographed. So when it comes to photographing people, if you've ever felt shy or intrusive because you're photographing, India has ways to remedy all of that. People are incredibly enthusiastic about photography, so much that they'll often call you over to take their photo, especially if you're a foreigner. Photography becomes the perfect bridge for connection. This openness makes people photography in India a pleasant and very often even a rewarding experience. While it is a diverse and a vast country, after traveling through about, I don't know, maybe 70% of it, photographing thousands of people, I can probably count the number of times that someone didn't want their photo taken. Being in such an environment is empowering. It builds your confidence as a photographer, and that confidence is essential. Once you have it, everything else just kind of falls into place. Now, few places around the world are as welcoming as India to photography, but realizing that there are places which so openly embrace photography was certainly a game changer. This knowledge alone gave me the confidence to try people photography in some of the more challenging places. You know, it's like having this reassuring knowledge in the back of your mind that somewhere in the world, people actually enjoy being photographed. This almost feels like some sort of validation when you find yourself in places where people are more reluctant. In India, people are incredibly open and welcoming to both photography and strangers. And this is largely due to a different understanding of personal space. For a Westerner, and I really hate that word Westerner, but I guess it's just the quickest way to describe people who kind of come from the same world as me. But for a Westerner, it can actually be jarring. It's different when people get right into your space. I remember during one of my early trips in India, maybe even my first trip, I was on a long bus ride and there was this guy right next to me. And then he just sort of leaned to sleep on my shoulder. And at first I was a little bit weirded out by it, but then I'd move and then he'd go back to his seat and then I'd go back against my seat again and he'd lean on me again. And so I thought, oh, well, I guess this is just how things are here. As a photographer, you have to ask, what does this mean for me and for my photography? In this case, it means that you can get physically closer to make your images. It also means that you can capture moments that might be too intimate to have access to elsewhere. Of course, cultural sensitivity is key. Getting very close to a woman, for example, may not be acceptable in many situations. But generally, this openness is a gift for a photographer. You don't want to be aggressive, but after establishing rapport, you can move in closer and you can capture intimate moments, contemplation, meditation, even sacred moments. But again, these interactions must be approached with respect. Don't be what I call a photo predator. If you're not sure, then hold back and don't make that photo. Over time, you develop a feel for when it's appropriate. You start reading people's body language, a smile, the Indian head nod. Once you get a feel for these, then you can start to create some truly powerful and up-close photos. And when you've gained experience and confidence, then you can start to adapt those lessons to other places. Many of these insights into body language, they're global. Being able to read people will go a long way to help you anywhere. In India, I made it almost a religious effort to wake up just before sunrise and get out to capture photos. For good reason. First and foremost, there's the light. As photographers, we love the morning light. But it's actually not only about the golden hour. The light in the first few hours of the morning changes rapidly, offering a range of scenarios from blue hour to golden hour, with colors looking incredibly vibrant. And then there are shadows, with their interplay with light. The changing light alone makes morning photography worthwhile. But mornings in India are also full of activity. Mornings are when life really begins to stir. Markets bustle as vendors bring in produce, fishermen pull in their nets, shepherds head out with their animals, and there are sacred rituals like morning prayers by holy rivers or temple visits. While things do happen throughout the day, mornings often offer the richest photographic opportunities. There is a unique energy in the air during those early hours. And then practically speaking, mornings often bring cooler weather. Sometimes this means mystical fog enveloping scenes, like in wintertime Varanasi. And in summer, you benefit from cooler temperatures before the day's heat becomes pretty much unbearable. Around the rest of the world, mornings are not necessarily quite as full of life as they are in India, but of course light, well, it's light everywhere. And the habit of getting up early to shoot that I developed in India has been great for me all around the world. While I have already touched on the beauty of morning light, the variety of lighting situations, lighting scenarios that India offers goes far beyond that. India's incredible diversity means that you can truly explore light through your photography. Whether you're navigating narrow streets, moving through temples, photographing rituals or festivals, shooting inside of people's homes, or simply observing light on a street corner, India provides a rich tapestry of lighting conditions. This absolute abundance of lighting scenarios allows you to truly experiment and eventually to master light as a photographer. I found myself shooting in various settings. Indoors by natural window light, during sunrises and sunsets of course, in the fog, and during the blue hour. And then there were unique situations, like when these wrestlers kicked up all the dust at training and light peeking through the window created a powerful visual effect. With so many potential subjects, I took the opportunity to learn how to use a reflector and an off-camera flash too. And I also worked with various artificial lighting scenarios with light that was just there, available artificial light. Each situation contributed to my growing understanding of light. While India certainly wasn't the first place where I learned to harness light, it was where I learned to appreciate its nuances deeply. This constant exposure to very different lighting scenarios in India helped me build a sort of a mental database of light, which has served me very well in other places too. Again, here's a photo of those wrestlers. And now have a look at a shot like this in Ethiopia. So India is where I truly learned to use and to harness the nuances of light in their many manifestations. And it's a skill that I apply absolutely everywhere in the world. When traveling, you'll often encounter people who constantly compare their current surroundings, of the new country, to back home, to their own country. Oh, but in my country it's like this. This shouldn't be like that. If this happened back home, this mindset not only ruins their journey, but it can be a pain in the ass for the people around them. For a photographer, for a travel documentary photographer, this approach is especially useless, unproductive. In documentary and travel photography, one of the most important skills to learn is to adapt. Don't try to change the world by imposing your views on it. When you meet people especially in a country that's as culturally rich, diverse, and different as India, rather than try to teach people how things could be better by your standards, why not focus on basically trying to gain a deeper understanding of their world? I was fortunate to travel with my great friend Hardik, who taught me a lot about India. Of course, he also learned from me about the world outside, and through our journeys we did have a few clashes, many of which were because of the cultural differences. And I think that's quite normal for many foreigners to feel moments of frustration where we say, you know, this is madness, this is so different from my country. But you have to set those feelings aside, because you're not there to change India, nor to change any other country for that matter. If you try to impose your expectations, you'll quickly find yourself frustrated and humbled. And this lesson applies to any country that's radically different to your own. That's like India, where the contrast is very striking. In these cases, you can only really learn to adapt. As a photographer, your task is to document and capture the world as it is, not as you think it should be. I mean, the very reason we're drawn to certain places is likely because they are so different, and through that difference, so fascinating. Embrace that difference instead of fighting it. And look, there are undoubtedly things in India that can be very difficult to comprehend, again from that Western perspective. There are in fact too many to mention, and some can be really shocking. However, before jumping to judgment, take the time to understand the complexities behind them. If you truly want to make a difference, then by all means do it, but do it thoughtfully and with an informed perspective. Quick fixes like, for example, handing out money on the street, that won't solve anything, nor will complaining all the time and wishing that things were different. Ultimately, I think that as a photographer, you can provide visual proof with your images. This can provoke thoughts and perhaps lay the groundwork for something bigger in the future. All right, I don't want to make this video too long. I'm in a place called Tafí del Valle in Argentina, a beautiful place, and I'm actually traveling with my parents. So I'm about to get back to them. But I do still have 5 more very important lessons to share with you. You can watch those in a couple of days. Or if you're watching this video a few days later, you might already see the next 5 lessons here. And in case you missed it, you should really watch this video. It's about the creative benefits of stepping out of your comfort zone.